Hey guys, so I'm finally doing another video. Sorry it's been such a long time since I've done one. I've just been really stressed out lately and had a lot to do with. Um, I started a new anxiety medication and I don't think it's quite working, and it's really hard to explain, but having anxiety is something that is really difficult to deal with, and I'm just trying to take it one day at a time, and it's really hard. Um, and you just kind of feel lost and depressed a lot of the time because you don't really know what to do and you don't really know how to fix anything. Um, but thankfully, I have a lot of really good friends who are able to help me out. Um, Speaking of friends, um, a lot of my friends are going through a lot of different things right now. So if you believe in God or whatever, if you could just pray for them or just send them happy thoughts, that would be awesome. Um, I got a new job. Um, the old job I had is I worked for a company and I would call people who had requested information about the company and just provide them with information, and that's like really boring job. So my new job is that I will be taking calls on behalf of people who call the company and ask the questions and transferring them where they need to go. So it seems like it's going to be a good switch for me. So there's that. I got to meet my friend's horse the other day, which was really fun. He was huge and a little bit intimidating, but he was like beautiful, and it was so great to spend time with one of my best friends. Um, okay, so now to move on to the part of the video that I know you're looking forward to the most. It's the next installment of the story of King Arthur and his knights, as interpreted by the lovely Howard Pyle. So, Chapter 2, Young Arthur's Birthright. And just to summarize what happened in the last chapter, so, basically there's like this big tournament in England, and Sir Kay, which is Arthur's older brother, his sword breaks during the tournament, and so Sir Kay goes and tells him, hey, can you get me another sword? So King Arthur, not King yet, but Arthur goes, and he pulls the sword out of the anvil and takes it to Sir Kay, and Sir Kay knows what the sword, like, the weight of the sword's power, and he decides that he's going to say that he pulled it out of the anvil so he can become king of all Britain. So Arthur did as Sir Kay commanded him, greatly possessed with wonder that his brother should be so disturbed in spirit, for he was not what he had done in drawing out that sword from the anvil, for so it is in this great world that a man sometimes proves himself to be worthy of great trust, and yet in lowliness of spirit he is unaware of that he is worthy thereof. And so it was with young Arthur. So he made haste to that part of the list where his father, Sir Ector, sat, and he said, Sire, my brother Kay hath sent me to bid thee come straightway unto our pavilion. Then Sir Ector arose and went with Arthur to the pavilion, and there behold, Sir Kay was standing in the pavilion, and his face was as white as ashes, and his eyes shone with wonderful brightness. And Sir Kay said to Sir Ector, Sire, here is a very wonderful matter. Therewith he took his father by the hand, and brought him to a table, and lo, there lay the sword of the anvil. Sir Ector immediately knew that sword, wherefore he was filled with astonishment, and he cried out, "How came you by that sword?" And Sir Kay said, "Sire, I brake my sword in battle, whereupon I found me this sword in its stead." Then Sir Ector was altogether amazed, but after a while he said, "If so be that thou didst draw forth this sword from the anvil, then it must also be that thou art rightwise King of Britain. But if thou didst indeed draw it from the anvil, then thou shalt as easily be able to thrust it back in again." At this Sir Kay was troubled in spirit, and he cried out, "Who could perform so great a miracle as to thrust a sword into solid iron?" Whereunto Sir Ector made reply, "Such a miracle is no greater than that thou hast performed in drawing it out." Then Sir Kay took comfort to himself, saying, "If my young brother Arthur was able to perform this miracle, why should I not do a miracle of a like sort?" So he wrapped the sword in the cloak again, and he said to Sir Ector and Arthur, and betook their way unto the marble stone and anvil. And Sir Kay mounted upon the cube of marble, and beheld the face of the anvil, and lo, it was without a scratch or scar of any sort. And Sir Kay said to himself, "What man is there in life who could thrust a sword blade into a solid anvil of iron?" Nevertheless, he put the point of the sword to the iron, and bore upon it with all his strength. But yet he did not pierce the iron even to the breadth of a hair. So at last he came down, and he said to his father, "Sire, no man in life may perform that miracle." Unto this Sir Ector made reply, "How is it possible then that thou couldst have drawn out the sword as thou sayest?" Then young Arthur lifted up his voice and said, "My father, I have thy leave to speak." And Sir Ector said, "Speak, my son." And Arthur said, "I would that I might essay to handle that sword." Whereunto Sir Ector replied, "By what authority wouldst thou handle that sword?" And Arthur said, "Because it was I who drew that sword from the anvil for my brother." Then Sir Ector gazed upon Arthur in such a strange manner that Arthur cried out, "Sire, why dost thou gaze so upon me? Hast thou anger against me?" Whereunto Sir Ector made reply, "In the sight of God, my son, I have no anger against thee. If thou hast a desire to handle the sword, thou mayest assuredly do so." So Arthur took the sword from Kay, and he leaped upon the marble stone, and he set the point of the sword upon the anvil, and bore upon it, and lo, the sword penetrated smoothly into the centre of the anvil, and there it stood fast. And after that he drew the sword forth swiftly and easily, and thrust it back in again. Then Sir Ector cried out, "Lord, Lord, what a miracle is mine eyes to behold!" And when Arthur came down from the cube of marble, Sir Ector kneeled down before him. But when Arthur beheld what his father did, he cried like one in pain, "My father, why didst thou kneel to me?" To him Sir Ector made reply, "I am not thy father, and now it is made manifest that the blood of kings flows in my veins." Then Arthur fell full of weeping, and he cried out, "Father, what is this that thou sayest? I beseech thee to arise." So Sir Ector arose and stood before Arthur, and he said, "Arthur, why dost thou weep?" And then Arthur said, "Because I am afeard." Then Sir Ector spake, saying, "Arthur, I trow thy time hath come for thee to know the true circumstances of thy life. Now, I do confess everything to thee in this wise, that 18 years ago there came to me an enchanter Merlin, and Merlin showed me the signet ring of Uther Pendragon, and he commanded me by the virtue of that ring that I should at the postern gate of Uther Pendragon's castle at midnight of that very day. So I went to that postern gate at midnight, and there came unto me Merlin and Sir Uthlis, who was the chief knight under Uther Pendragon's household. And Merlin bare in his arms a child not long born, and wrapped in swaddling clothes, and I saw the child in the light of a lanthorn which Sir Uthlis bore, and he was very fair of face and large of bone, and that wert that child. Then Merlin commanded me to take that child and rear him as mine own, and he said that the child was to be called Arthur, and he said that no one was to know otherwise than that the child was mine own. And I told Merlin that I would do as he would have me, and that the lady who was my wife took the secret with her unto paradise when she died. And since then until now no one in all the world knew aught of this matter but I, and those two aforementioned worthies. nor have I, until now, known who was my father, but now I do suspect that thy father was Uther Pendragon himself, for who but his son could have drawn forth that sword from the anvil. Then Arthur cried out, Woe, woe! And Sir Ector said, Arthur, why art thou woeful? And Arthur said, Because I have lost my father, for I would rather have my father than be a king. Now there came unto the place two men very tall and of noble appearance, and one was the enchanter Merlin, and the other was Sir Uplus. And Merlin spake again, saying, What cheer? And Sir Ector made answer, Here is the cheer of a very wonderful sort. For behold, Merlin, this is the child that thou didst bring unto me 18 years ago, and lo, thou seest he hath grown unto manhood. Then Merlin said, Sir Ector, I know very well who is this youth, for I have kept diligent watch over him for all of this time. Within the surface of an enchanted looking-glass I have beheld all that he hath done today. And lo, the spirit of prophecy is upon me, and I do foresee that thou, Arthur, shall become the greatest king that ever lived in Britain, and I do foresee that many knights of extraordinary excellence shall gather about thee, and I do foresee that the most marvellous adventure of the Holy Grail shall be achieved by thee in the knights of thy court, and that to thy lasting renown. And lo, the time is now at hand when the glory of thine house shall again be made manifest unto the world, and all the people of this land shall rejoice in thee and thy kinghood. Wherefore, Sir Ector, for these 3 days to come, do thou guard this young man as the apple of thine eye, for in him doth lie the hope and salvation of this realm. All this while Sir Kay stood like one unto one struck by thunder, and he wist not whether to be uplifted unto the skies or to be cast down into the depths, that his young brother should thus have been exalted unto that extraordinary altitude of fortune. But then Sir Ector cried unto Arthur, A boon, a boon. And Arthur said, Dost thou, my father, ask a boon of me when thou mayest have all in the world that is mine to give? And it is thine. Then Sir Ector said, I do beseech this of thee, that when thou art king, thy brother Kay may be a seneschal of thy realm. And Arthur said, It shall be as thou dost ask. And he said, As for thee, I shall be still better, for thou shalt be my father unto the end. Whereupon he took Sir Ector's head into his hands, and he kissed Sir Ector to seal the plighted word. So when the morning of Christmas Day had come, many thousands of folk of all qualities, both gentle and simple, gathered in front of the church to behold the essay of the sword. Now there had been a canopy of an embroidered cloth set above the sword, and nigh unto the place there had been a throne for the archbishop established. For the archbishop was to overlook the essay, and to see the very circumstance was filled with due equity. And after the archbishop had established himself upon his throne, he commanded his heralds to sound a trumpet, and to bid all who had the right to make essay of the sword to come unto this adventure. Now unto that essay there had gathered 19 kings and 16 dukes. And when the herald had sounded his trumpet, there immediately appeared the first of these kings, and he was King Lot of Orkney. King Lot mounted that platform, and first he saluted the archbishop, and then he laid his hands to the sword. And he drew upon the sword with great strength, but he could not move the blade in the anvil even the breadth of a hair. And he tried 4 times more, but still he was altogether unable to move the blade. Then, filled with anger, he came down from that place. And after King Lot there came his brother-in-law, King Urien from Gore, but neither did he succeed. And after King Urien there was King Theon of Scotland, and King Mark of Cornwall, and King Rience of North Wales, and then came 30 other kings and dukes, and not one of all of these was able to move the blade. Now the people who were there astonished. They said to one another, If all these kings and dukes have failed to achieve this adventure, then who may have hoped to succeed? And likewise those kings and dukes spoke together in the same manner, and there came 6 of the most worthy. And they stood before the archbishop and spake in this wise, Sir, here have all the kings and dukes of this realm striven to draw forth that sword, and lo, no, not one hath succeeded. What then may we understand but that the enchanter Merlin hath set this adventure for to bring upon shame to all of us and upon you who are the head of the church. Then the archbishop, much troubled in spirit, but he spake aloud, Messires, I have yet faith that Merlin hath not deceived us, wherefore I pray your patience for a little while longer. For if in the time a man can count 500 twice over, no one cometh forward to perform this task, and I will choose from amongst you, and I will proclaim him king and overlord of all. Now Merlin had bidden Arthur and his father and brother to abide in their pavilion until such a time as he thought fit for them to come out. And now Merlin and Sir Uthus went to the pavilion, and Merlin said, Arthur, arise and come forth, for the hour is come. So Arthur did as Merlin bade him, and he came forth from the pavilion where his father and his brother, and he was like one who walked in a dream. So they five went down to the church and unto the place of a stay. And when they had come there the people made way for them, saying to one another, Who are these with the enchanter Merlin and Sir Uthus? For all the world knew Merlin and Sir Uthus, and Arthur was clad in a flame-colored raiment and embroidered with silver, so that the others of the people said, Certes, that youth is fair to look upon. Now who may he be? But Merlin said no word to any man, but he brought Arthur through the press into the place where the archbishop sat, and Merlin said, Lord, here is one come to make the say of yonder sword, and he laid his hand upon Arthur. Then the archbishop looked upon Arthur, and he beheld that the youth was very comely of face, wherefore his heart went out unto Arthur. And then the archbishop said, Merlin, by what right doth this young man come hither? And Merlin made reply, Lord, he cometh hither by the best right in the world, for he is the true son of Uther Pendragon, and his faithful lawful wife, Queen Igraine. Then the archbishop cried aloud in amazement, and he said, Merlin, what is this that thou tellest me? For who until now hath ever heard that Uther Pendragon had a son? Unto this Merlin made reply, Until now only a very few have known of such a thing, for it was in this wise. When this child was born, I foresaw that Uther Pendragon would die before a great while. Wherefore I feared that the enemies of the king would lay violent hands upon the young child. So at the king's behest I and another took the child and gave him unto a third, and that man received the kingly child and retained him as his own son. And there the others who may attest the truth of these things, for who was with me when the child was taken away from his mother was Sir Uthus, and he to whom he was entrusted was Sir Ector of Bonmaison, and those two witnesses are without any reproach. And Sir Uthus and Sir Ector said, All that Merlin hath spoken is true. And then the archbishop looked upon Arthur and smiled, and Arthur said, Have I then thy leave, lord, to handle yonder sword? And the archbishop said, Thou hast my leave. Thereupon Arthur went to the marble stone, and he laid his hands upon the haft of the sword that was in the anvil. And he bent his body and drew, and lo, the sword came forth with great ease, and he swung the sword about his head so that it flashed like lightning. And after he had swung it thus thrice about his head, he set the point thereof against the face of the anvil, and bore it, and below the sword slid smoothly back into place. Now when the people had beheld this miracle performed, they lifted up their voices all together in a tumult of outcry. And all the kings and dukes who were there were filled with amazement. But some of them were not willing to acknowledge Arthur. These withdrew, and they said amongst themselves, Who can accredit such a thing, that a beardless boy should be set above us all? Nay, we shall have nothing of him. But others of the kings and dukes came and saluted Arthur, and paid him court, giving him joy which he had achieved. And all the multitude crowded around the place, shouting so that it seemed like thunder. And when Arthur departed, great crowds followed after him, giving him loud acclaim as the chosen king of England, wherefore his heart was uplifted with great gladness, so that his soul took wing and flew like a bird into the sky. Thus Arthur achieved the adventure of the sword, and entered into his birthright of royalty. Wherefore may God grant his grace unto you all, that ye too may likewise succeed in your undertaking. For any man may be a king in that life in which he is placed, if so he may draw forth the sword of success from out of the iron of circumstance. Wherefore when your time of the stay cometh, I do hope it may be with you as it was with Arthur that day. Um, love you all. I will see you in the next vlog. Stay gold.